Welcome to the Church Doctors Podcast with Scott and Marla Sheely. The Church Doctors Podcast is brought to you by Outpouring International. Love God, love people.
That's right. Hello, everybody. My name's Scott.
And I'm Marla.
And we are the Church Doctors, and we're so glad that you're here with us today.
Yes. It's a beautiful day here in Columbia Falls, Montana. We actually have the sun shining.
It's wintertime now as we're recording this, and up here in the Flathead Valley that we live in, the sun doesn't shine every day.
No.
So when it does, we're sure happy.
Everybody's excited and out on the roads and outside. But we're inside today, and we wanted to do a podcast, and we wanted to share a story. So today is Story Hour with Scott and Marla.
This is a great faith-building story that anybody can apply to your own life.
Yeah, it's the story of how we went from living in a single-wide 1960-something trailer to living in a beautiful log home, 2-story, 4-bedroom, no-cost log home.
Yeah. So we were working in a 100-acre church camp that belonged to the church that we attended.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In Manford, Oklahoma.
On Lake Keystone.
And the camp itself was kind of a miracle provision story. Our pastor believed God for a camp that could minister to the poor ethnic side of town, and he wanted a camp. He made a list and he put it before God. He said, I want 100 acres, I want it to be on a lake, and I want it free. And so a friend of his found a Corps of Engineers campground on Lake Keystone that had been abandoned by the Corps. And our church was able to, long story short, be able to rent this property for $1 a year for 100 years.
And someone paid that.
So. Somebody paid the $1 right there at the table, and so our pastor got the whole thing for free.
And that was all. That's a very, very short Reader's Digest version of that story, because it's an amazing story.
Yeah, but because we're shortening that part of the story, because today we want to tell you how we received a beautiful log home to live in instead of that old junky trailer house. Matter of fact, you fell through the floor of that trailer house one day.
I was pregnant. I was in the hallway, and there I went.
Yeah, so they were old, and we were living in there with 3 kids. Mm-hmm.
The floor was just a mess. If you've ever lived in a trailer house, you know that the floors don't always.
They were made out of particle board,
yeah,
and they got wet.
Yeah, and I remember the bathtub would be.
It wasn't.
It was not flat.
It wouldn't drain all the way.
It wouldn't drain all the way, so there was always water in the bathtub.
We had to push the water out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had 3 kids in one bedroom. I stacked them up. I made homemade bunk beds and kept stacking them up higher and higher until I made them all fit, and we made it work. But one day we were in a meeting up in the cafeteria.
Yeah. It was a staff meeting, I think, or maybe a weekend retreat or something of that sort.
And our pastor was there with his wife, and right at one point in the meeting, he felt like we needed to, he said, let's all pray for Scott and Marla to have a new house. And then he said, Scott, what are you believing for? without telling me ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And of course, down inside of my heart, had been the desire to live in a log home forever. And so I just yelled out in front of everybody and God, I'm believing God for a log home. And all the wind just sucked right out of my pastor's chest. And he went ahead and prayed that we would have a home.
Now you need to understand that everything that this ministry does in Oklahoma is debt-free. So there's everything that has been built, and it still is.
Yeah.
They have,
and it's massive.
It's massive ministry. It's
worldwide.
Yes, yeah. And it has always been debt free.
And the modus operandi for the camp was to do it debt free also. Right. And one of the custom for everybody curses on a camp is that everybody does it as cheap as they can. They get the free stuff they can get, and then they build everything junkie in a camp. It just
And
seems
I've
like
seen that at a lot
seems like
of
that's how camps
yeah.
work. And so maybe he kind of had it in the back of his head that we just need to get enough to get by for this to make a camp. We don't need. Of course, we didn't own the property either. It was a lease, and
That's
so he
true.
was thinking maybe a double wide trailer house, a new one for us would be nice.
Yeah.
But I just skipped right past that and shouted out, I want a log home.
Right?
So I find out after the meeting that he couldn't get an agreement with me on that for some reason, but his wife could.
Yeah.
And she
Bless her heart.
she
Yay.
prayed out loud over the whole meeting. Well, thank you, God, for a log home for Scott. I mean, she just
Yeah.
ripped it right out loud in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And then the meeting was over.
And that was it.
we didn't see hide nor hair of a log home for 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think after
Well,
that.
it must have been because we had 3 kids and we had been living there for quite a while.
Yeah.
And
And
then
so
one
we went
day, we went.
we
to
went on vacation.
We did. We went to Silver Dollar City, I think it was,
in Branson,
right?
Missouri. Mm-hmm. And we got a phone call from our pastor, which was a shock because he doesn't call me.
Right. Well, it's a huge ministry.
Yeah.
And,
And he said, Scott, I got good news. There was a lady in our church that just loved the camp. And in her will, if she was to die, she left a certain amount of money, like $24,000 or $28,000 for the camp. And I want you to use it for your house. And I was like, and she had passed away. So her family gave the money to the church. And down in my heart, I was like, nice, but that ain't going to buy a
house.
That's not going to even buy a double wide trailer, let alone a
Right?
long. So, but it was a start.
Yeah.
And so we were excited about that. And then I don't know. It was also during that certain part of the story where there was a mailbox store.
It was a liquor store.
It was and it used to be a liquor store
On a really popular
and a
busy
mailbox store.
highway,
It was right on the
intersection.
corner
Yeah.
of two roads that were pretty close to our church at that time in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And the Slotsky's Deli had bought the lot and needed that
I still
building
love eating there.
taken away so that they could build
a
their
Slotsky.
store.
Mm-hmm.
Well, come to find out, this building was a log building. It was
It
a
was.
1,200 square foot log building with a roof on it and windows.
And it was in bad shape.
And it wasn't in real good
They
shape.
hadn't taken care of the logs,
But
that needed to be removed.
somebody suggested that maybe they would give it to the camp because
It was
I
a
was looking
log
for a
home.
log home.
Mm-hmm.
And so our associate pastor thought that somebody said that they were going to give it to the camp. So he goes down there with all this thankful confidence, thank you for giving this house
Right.
to the church. And the guy was like, what? What are you talking about?
I don't know about that.
We're going to take it apart and haul it out to the lake and put it up for our lake home. And, so all this confusion was going on. Well, long story short, the owner of the property finds out, and they gave it to the
They gave
church.
it to us.
And so
But now we have to move it.
a moving company comes, and instead of being able to just pick up the whole thing and go down the road, it was too big. And so they had to, instead of taking it apart like you should a real move of a log structure, they cut it in half. So here comes my log home.
In 2 pieces.
That's in 2 pieces, cut in. Straight down the sides with a chainsaw, cut in half.
Yeah. Yeah. And it took all day to go.
17 miles. Yeah,
It was crazy.
It was. They had to stop and keep putting it together and putting boards on it. It finally made it. They put one half on one side of the driveway and the other half on the other side, and sat it down
At
on
the
blocks.
entrance of the camp.
And it sat there for another 2 years.
Yeah.
All the while we're having to drive past this thing. It was like it was taunting us.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm your future house.
Right.
But nothing.
But I'm cut in half.
But it didn't look like anything else was going to happen because everything out there happened on donation basis.
Right.
And
the horses loved it.
Yeah, we had a couple horses on the camp.
They would go inside, the half.
Yeah.
And hang out.
And, they loved to go in there and look at themselves in the reflection in the glass in the windows.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But so I can't remember, how did we get the money to put it together?
Well, maybe that was what we used, that 26
Maybe
or
we started with that. Maybe that's when that miracle happened.
Yeah, we had to pour some concrete.
Yeah, and but before that,
they had to move the old trailers.
We got a call. You saw in the newspaper.
Oh, I forgot about that.
The staircase.
The staircase. I saw this thing in the newspaper that someone was giving away an oak staircase, and I thought, well, cool. We could, maybe we could have a loft in this 1,200 square foot.
But it wasn't a 2-story building. It was just a single-story building.
But
so here's my wife. She's going, here's a staircase, honey.
Maybe we could have a loft, get my faith out there just a little bit.
Right. So we contact these people, and sure enough,
they say, we'll bring some people with you.
You can have it if you can move it.
Yeah.
And because our church was a big church, we had some construction workers that were full-time there. Mm-hmm. And one of them is a equipment operator. And so they had a boom truck, kind of a piece of equipment, and they reached in the double front doors of this home
that was sitting on a golf course that was being torn down,
and they grabbed this 180-degree spiral oak staircase that was custom made for this house. It was a $21,000 staircase with bent handrails, oak balusters, all the carved swoopy pieces on the ends, mm-hmm. and it was awesome. And so they lifted that thing out of there and sat it on my trailer, and I drove it out to the camp. Mm-hmm. And I had to hang it from the rafters of one of the picnic shelters because we didn't have anywhere to put it.
Wrapped up in
plastic. And it just sat there.
And it sat there for another year or two.
So finally...
So now we have two halves of a really bad shape log building
and a staircase
and a beautiful.
So now we have to make it 2-story.
Now we do.
So the money comes from the widow lady that passed away, and so we poured concrete.
I remember that day. It was raining.
It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
But before that happened, someone came to you and said, asked to see the plans or whatever, and we were only going to do the 1,200 square feet.
Yeah.
And he says, no, you need to...
Dixon Gunn.
Yeah, you need
He was an architect.
You need to add on some more to that. You're not thinking big enough.
That's right. He came to me and drew plans for another wing coming off the side of this house with an upstairs that went all the way across the original building and then kept going across the top of a 2-car garage. And I was like, now you're talking.
Right.
So we
But everything's done by donations.
Yeah, so we poured the concrete, which was a huge ordeal.
Right.
And I didn't have enough help, and it took forever. But and then a moving company came back and stuck the halves of the building back up onto the foundation.
And it sat again.
And then it just sat there for a while until I went into a men's ministry meeting and told a story about helping the kids catch fish out at the camp or something. And I told a story about how the first time I caught fish, I caught a sunfish up in Echo Lake here in the Flathead Valley, and because I grew up here. And I peed my pants because I was so excited that this fish was coming. Yeah, I was a little boy. And they thought that story was so endearing and loved it so much, the picture of the excitement of these boys and girls getting to catch their first year at camp, that people just started to donate.
Yeah.
Every meeting we would have, pastor would take up an offering and money would come in and people would donate tile and bathtubs, and a man who worked at ORU had access to some oak trees that had blown down in the wind when Oral was there. And the Oral asked for those logs, specific trees, to be saved for a project that he wanted, and they never used them. And so this man made a mantle for the fireplace in that place
bedroom
out of one of Oral Roberts' oak trees that had blown. It was just fun. It was just, not that means anything, but it was just fun. And
people donated granite countertops.
Yeah, we
throughout the
had
whole
granite
place.
countertops. We had Italian tile. We had a 2-person jacuzzi tub in the master bedroom with
Which
a
had a fireplace
in the bedroom. And when we had to frame up the addition wing that went off the side, God sent a trained apartment builder to frame that part of the building without any blueprints. He cut everything for us and threw it up to us from the ground just by knowing what to do. It was like an angel from God
was it for
showed
the
up.
dormers?
Huh?
Was it for the
yeah,
dormers?
for the dormers and the roof, and just amazing things kept happening to where, and then we covered that wing with log siding so that it would look like the whole thing was a log home.
And he cleaned up the old logs, and inside and outside it was a log.
It turned
home.
out beautiful.
It was gorgeous.
My brother-in-law was a
wood
rock mason,
stove.
and he built a hearth for our wood stove out of some Colorado River rock,
Yeah.
and we had
It was
gorgeous,
porch.
beautiful. Somebody donated all the appliances too. We
had
had
a double wall oven, and
we had fancy stuff in
6
there.
or 8 burner propane
propane
oven.
cooktop.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. We went from falling through the floor of a trailer house to living in a 2,400 square foot brand new log home
4 bedrooms
with 4 bedrooms and 2.5 baths.
2.5 baths.
And so we tell this story to encourage you. You know, God listens to our faith. The Bible says that a man eats the fruit of his lips. So if we would have said, oh, you know, this job is just so medium and we're always going to live in this subpar stuff and we're just going to have to endure, you know, all of this and God will be happy because we're sacrificing living in a house that's actually a house instead of falling through the floor of this old junky thing. And instead we were like, no, let's believe God for something better. And it was a wild dream. It was a wild belief because again, there was nothing like that on the camp that was not that nice.
Right.
And God was listening.
Yeah.
And I had a woman of God, Sharon Doherty, that was listening with me, and she said, well, I'll pray with you.
Yeah.
It was almost kind of funny because her husband wouldn't, but she did. And there it's still sitting there today, and we hosted famous preachers and prophets and
stayed there at that house.
Speakers in our own house, and we're able to offer them something nice to stay in. And we had home meetings in there where we could use our gift of hospitality, and we would sit and prophesy to each other, encourage each other, and the whole staff of the camp. At one time, we would have like 30 young people working with us, and they would all come in there, and we'd have stupid movie night with ice creams and pizza or something. And we just used that thing to glorify God in so many ways. And I know there's people listening today, Marla, that you have a dream.
Yeah.
That there's something that you just know this is how it's supposed to be. It could be anything. We're telling you a story about a house, but
well, and people have dreams, and they might share their story or their dream with somebody, and they might not get the response that they would like to get.
Right. I mean, my senior pastor, whom I respect a lot, couldn't see it.
He didn't have that vision.
And he couldn't see it, but somebody did. So don't listen to public opinion. Don't.
If God gives you a dream,
you hold on to that.
Yeah.
Find scriptures that agree with what you're praying about, believing God for, and just stay there and thank Him for it.
And don't just limit it to what you can dream. Dream bigger,
because
if it's
not
possible, then
that's right.
It needs to be impossible for God to get involved.
This whole story is impossible from the very beginning.
I mean, I wish this had pictures, because the pictures of this home was
if
just
you could
amazing.
just see it, it was absolutely beautiful, with that oak staircase going right up in the middle of the home and up out of there.
Yeah, it was an open floor plan, so
Yeah.
the kitchen, the living room, downstairs living room, and the dining room.
One of the guys in the church made us cabinets for the whole house for free.
Yeah.
The hickory cabinets,
custom
beautiful. I mean,
there's just so many stories about that house.
I know. I'm starting to remember more of them as we go.
Yeah, we can't even begin to tell you all of them, because there were so many miracles in that house.
And so God still does creative miracles today. He does things that'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
We've seen him since then. That one experience has given us the boldness and the courage to trust God. When he said one day, he said, "I want you to leave the camp, and I want you to move, and I'm not going to tell you where." And I'm like, okay, I trust you, God, because you never let us down. You've
got
always
4 kids now at this time,
and a dog and all kinds of furniture now, and we did. A few months later, after we prepared the next guy to take over, we left, and it's been a journey ever since. We've pastored a couple churches and
journey.
Been to many nations of the earth, encouraging the body of Christ. So.
And now we're doing podcasts, and we're
yeah,
on the
here
radio.
we are talking to you, telling you this story. I never would have dreamed that I would have a podcast.
Right?
It's just like I'm still living in the impossible.
Sometimes we just limit ourselves. We think, well, I can only do this much. I live in this really small town, or I'm not someone who's famous. I don't have a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera. We have all these excuses, but we all serve the same God.
Yeah.
All of us serve the same big God.
And not only are we limiting ourselves and our own blessing, but we're limiting God. God wants to give good things to his children. He wants for us to have what we need to carry out our ministry, whatever that is to you, whatever it is that you need. Maybe you're believing God for a book published or a computer so that you can start writing your book. I mean, wherever you're at, just thank God that he puts good things in your hand if you've got a purpose for it.
Right.
If it's not selfishness, we're not trying to get rich by pulling the slot machine arm on the side of God and make him give us things. But no, we're
777s or whatever.
We believe in the heart of a good father who cares about his children and provides for what we need.
Right. To fulfill the call and destiny on each of our lives.
We've seen medical bills, $40,000 worth of medical bills paid for 100%. We've seen plane tickets come in where we didn't have any money to go, and our whole trip would get paid for. Matter of fact, one time we were getting ready to go on. We were planning a whole year's worth of ministry, and one guy asked me how much that was going to cost, and wrote a check for the whole year's worth of plane trips.
But we need to say something about that one, because we didn't. We tried to limit.
I still had even after all the miracles I'd seen up to that point, I didn't tell the guy the truth. I reduced the amount by like $10,000.
Yeah.
And he said, "Okay, I'll call you right back." Well, he had been listening to Holy Spirit, and he knew I wasn't telling him the right amount. So he calls me back and he goes, "Okay, tell me the right amount." And I was just so embarrassed. I knew that the amount was $10,000 more, so I told him, $26,000 or something, right
At
around
that
there.
time, yeah.
And he goes, "Okay, I'll have the check ready for you tomorrow." And even though I wanted to limit God and limit how much I could do that year, God was like, "No, I need you to go to this many places because these people need to hear about me the way you say it." So He made a way even when I couldn't see it. And so I'm not saying you have to be perfect at this, but I think that we had put our trust and our whole heart in God, and he knew that we were going to use that money for his glory. So he was like, "I'm making sure you guys get this."
Right.
I don't know how to, I can't suppose what God was thinking, but he had to have been laughing when I didn't say the right amount to begin with.
He was like, right, I'll get you on this one. But we do limit God. He's got such big plans for everyone.
Yeah.
And we have this little human thinking, and we don't have the faith to even try. And he's got so much for us to do.
Yeah. People that will pray for their loved ones until they get saved. They just pray, they pray for years, after year after year, and then every single family member in their family is born again.
Yeah.
And so it's what's your ministry? What has God called you to do? And what do you have in your hand? Go get started, because he already gave you what you need to get started. And don't despise small beginnings, because we could have been upset that's not a real log home.
Right.
but God made it into
He
one.
did.
I drilled that thing and put wood dowels in and
If we had
put
that
a
up
fireplace over the top of one of the seams on one side, and the kitchen was over the seams on the other side, so you couldn't see
Never
where it was
saw
cut
the
in half.
seams.
I mean, so don't get all bent out of shape when your beginning doesn't look perfect,
Right.
because God's on his way to giving you the full deal.
Well, the thing we used to always say was something to the effect of, if time wasn't an option or money wasn't an issue, or there was three things, I can't remember what they were, but if nothing could stop you, what would you do today?
Yeah, and then dream that.
Yeah.
Dream it with God and see what he'll do. Because he's the great dreamer. We're his dream. Jesus came and made his dream a reality, that we all get to be part of his family. And then he says, now I have to go back to the Father. I've given you the ability to be my lookalike partners in the earth. Now you go do the same thing I did. So we're God's dream. He works in the dream realm. He gave Joseph dreams. He gave there's I don't know how many 300 dreams in the Bible, or some crazy number. And so God's not afraid of using a dream. So what is in your heart? And
it doesn't matter how old you are.
It doesn't matter how much it's going to cost. Whatever the limitations are that are in the natural. What would you do if all of those were taken care of? And then set that before God and thank him that thing is on the way.
And it is.
Yeah.
It is.
So
We've got big dreams.
Yeah.
We've got really big dreams, bigger than our...
We're still dreaming.
We're still dreaming. We haven't stopped, and we're not going to.
The last one we dreamed took all the breath out of the room in our own house. So God keeps expanding your faith.
Right.
And he keeps showing up, and he keeps providing.
Start dreaming
so
again.
So we release your miracle to come. We release your faith
to
dream again, to come. And then we just release the joy of seeing your prayers answered, like we get to have.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll never forget that house.
Oh, my goodness.
We'll never forget God reaching in and saying, here, I am honoring your faith. I'm honoring what you said out loud in front of all those people, because you said it in my name.
Yeah.
And so you can do it too. We believe in you, and can't wait to hear the testimonies that come from you. Yeah, right? God believes in you too.
He does. He does.
So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. We look forward to talking and sharing again the next time on The Church Doctors.
Thanks for joining us on the Church Doctors Podcast. For more information or to contact us, please visit our website at outpouringintl.com.